welcome. We're so happy you're here. Okay, just by way of introduction, my name's Angela Judd, and I started gardening in 2008, became a master gardener in 2015. When I first started gardening, it was tough to figure out what I was doing. And once I started knowing where to find the answers and figuring out some of the answers, I really wanted to help those people who were just like me, who did not know what they were doing. And so that's really what drives me, is that gardener who was trying so hard and not doing very well. I'm really passionate about helping people garden in the desert through my website, Growing in the Garden, classes like this. I also teach an online monthly class called Growing in the Garden Academy. That's a lot of fun. And planting guides that you just saw, and my YouTube channel. Teaching either online or in person is really, I would say, my favorite part of my job. Okay, so fall and winter gardening. It doesn't quite feel like fall, right, yet. Although I was outside for a couple of hours this morning working in the garden, and it was really nice. The mornings are cool, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more. All right, it's still hot. This is the question I'm getting a lot. It's still hot. Should I plant my fall garden? I'll give you the answer. Because I film monthly videos for YouTube, and they post at the beginning of the month. So when am I filming those videos? Before that, right? A little bit before. Here's a little bit of behind the scenes for you. So I planted a lot of my October stuff a week or, the end of September, right? And so during that remember that cool spell that we had? Everyone was so happy everywhere you went. It was so nice. We're all just felt so happy. And so I planted so much during that cool spell. And then what happened? It got hot. And what was the record? Like 116, 117, crazy hot. So yesterday I kind of evaluated everything that I'd planted, and overall, everything's doing pretty well. I did lose a few things, but things are growing well. So my answer to you would be yes, and I'm going to tell you why. Even though we're hitting these high degrees, it's not the same as in June or July. The days are shorter, the nights are cooler, and the sun's angle is lower, so it hits different. It's still hot. The plants, they're outside that whole day and through the night and everything, and they're going to be okay. One of the struggles, if you were here at the class last month in Scottsdale, we talked a lot about the different seasons, and the challenge with gardening in Arizona really is our short seasons. So because our seasons are short, we got to jump right in and get going. So if you haven't yet, don't wait. It's really time to plant. But here's the caveats, right? If we're going to plant when it's hot, so the fundamentals matter all the time, but they matter even more when it's a little bit challenging. You have to have good soil. Top 12 to 18 inches of whatever you're gardening in needs to be good soil. If you're planting seeds, plant them a little bit deeper. The soil's a little bit cooler, and they won't dry out as quickly. If you're starting seeds indoors, harden them off. That means getting them gradually accustomed to outside conditions. And then instead of planting in the middle of the day or even in the morning, plant in the evening. And then they can settle in overnight before the heat of the day the next day. That just gives them a little bit longer to settle in. Other fundamentals like providing shade. I keep shade up in my garden until the temperatures are consistently below 90 degrees. So we're not quite there yet, right? Providing shade makes a big difference. It's going to cool the air temperature by about 10 degrees. And then mulch is also going to be helpful. Mulch is basically the protective layer on your soil, and it's going to help hold in moisture. And you're probably going to have to water a little bit more, especially those young seedlings. Their root balls are pretty small, right? And if that dries out, they can die. They don't have those roots that have become established. So any seed or seedling, we're going to have to water them a little bit more when it's hot because they're going to dry out more quickly. This is what you need to do, but it's going to be okay, right? You're going to plant. You're going to look around and be like, okay, these plants are tougher than I thought, right? They are going to be okay. The first tip I'm going to share is to understand our fall and winter planting seasons. Giving you a little bit of an overview of what we're heading into Yes, we have beautiful weather right now, and for the next several months, it's a little bit different for the plants, and here's why. This is October, so cooler nighttime temperatures, warm days. The plants love it, right? Their roots, the soil is warm, there's still sunlight, they can get established and grow, and they're going to kind of take off, right, when you plant. When we head into December and early February, everything's going to slow down a little bit. Yes, you can still plant. If you look at the planting lists, there's still things on there, and you can still plant, but it's going to be slower. Everything slows down a bit. The days are even shorter than they were, and the sun's angle is even lower than it was, and crops are not going to grow as quickly. So getting crops planted now in this October-November window is crucial if you want production. Because it's wonderful to have a garden and grow a garden, but if we're not harvesting anything from it, it's kind of disheartening, right? It's kind of disappointing. We really want to actually pick something, eat something from our garden. So getting things planted now will help them. So crops that you plant later on aren't going to grow as quickly. So this is my garden, I believe, in January. These things were probably planted in October or November. So they're growing, but things slow down a little bit. And the other thing that's possible in this time period is some frost. So you're definitely not planting warm season crops like tomatoes and peppers and things like that. The brassicas and all of these don't mind the frost, but if we do get a frost, those warm season crops that we try and overwinter, like tomatoes and peppers and eggplants, you'll want to cover those if we get a freeze. So that's kind of the seasons there. So tip number 2, we want to maximize the sunlight. So now you might understand a little bit more why we want to maximize the sunlight where we're planting, because there's going to be less of it. The days are shorter and there's going to be less sun. So if we want our garden to grow well, we need to maximize that sun. When I first started gardening, it was in my side yard. And like a lot of people, right, there's a 2-story house on the side of me, and I've just got this little strip, but it was the only place that was kind of mine in our yard. And the sunlight conditions weren't ideal. It didn't get enough sun, but it grew, and it grew fine. It grew well. But when I added a garden to my kind of more open area that got a lot more sun, I was shocked how quickly things grew. I was used to a much more slower paced garden. When things got more sun, they grew much more quickly. So don't be afraid of sunlight. We want to maximize the sunlight in your fall and winter garden. If you have a choice, if you're gardening in containers, or you have a choice of where to garden, maximize that sunlight. You want to make sure that you're getting at least 6 to 8 hours, if you can, of sunlight, which is sometimes different than the way we think about sunlight during the summer, right? But here we really want to try and have as much as we can. That summer sun is much higher in the sky, and it's going to be above that 2-story house next to you. It's going to, you're going to have more sunlight from that. But as the seasons change, the sun is going to get lower and lower in the sky. So there's going to be less sun. And in the summer especially, where I'm always talking about morning sun, here it's really, okay, where can we get, any sun? Because any sun during the day is going to be helpful for your garden. I'm surprised sometimes when I walk out to my garden at different times than I normally do, because areas that I feel like, oh, this gets plenty of sun, I'm surprised during the fall and winter, those areas are already in the shade when I wouldn't have realized that. So observe your garden so you can see how much sun it's getting. But something you can do if you are not getting enough sun is plant things a little bit further apart, right? Because then those plants won't shade each other and they're going to have enough room to grow well. Those individual plants will do well and they won't compete. So what do you do if you don't quite have, 6 to 8 hours? These are crops that will grow with less. Their growth is going to be slower, kind of like what I said with my side yard garden. It grew fine. It was just a little bit slower. So 4 to 6 hours of sun, you can still grow all of these crops. These are wonderful winter crops here. And we can plant, I love being able to say, we can plant all of these right now, even beans, just because it's still pretty warm, and different kind of beans. Even less sun, 3 to 4 hours, focusing on things that you just eat the leaves of. We're not asking as much of the plant to produce flowers and fruit. We're just asking them to produce these leaves or roots. And that's really, if you have less sun, those are some of the things that can grow well there. Herbs are also a really good option. If you don't have a lot of sun, they will also grow in those areas. So just kind of as you think about what you're going to plant, look at the sunlight and plant accordingly. If you have areas that get more sun, that's where you're going to want to put some of your, peas and broccoli and things that you're really wanting to kind of grow a little bit faster. If it's just the leaves that we're eating, less sun. Tip number 3, evaluate your existing crops. What is this? Okra. Who grew okra this year? Okay, who's going to grow it next year? Come on. Okay, guys, this is one crop. It will grow all summer long, and even if you don't eat it, it's okay if you don't eat it. There's reasons why you should, but it will shade your soil, grow amazingly well, and you won't have to do a thing. It's so great. So because we can garden year-round, we aren't always starting off with these garden beds that are just empty, that we're just able to plant whatever we want. Although I did ask a few people, how's your garden? And the answer was like, oh. So you might be starting over, so that's easy. That's great. That makes it super easy because you can just fill it up. But if you still have things growing, we have short seasons. So you have to ask yourself some questions. Do I keep this crop in? Do I pull it out? And really, there's not a right or a wrong answer. So is it still producing, right? Am I still getting all the okra I could eat, right? But am I sick of eating it? Am I tired of okra? Am I tired of whatever it is? Are there pests or diseases that are kind of starting to take over? And the final question, would you really rather plant something else? And that's okay. It's okay to prioritize the crops that you want to grow because we have to make those choices sometimes because we'll have limited space and our seasons are short. And then there are also some crops that we're not going to, that are just going to stay like we talked about. Tomatoes, peppers, eggplants. Those will grow really well through our fall and winter seasons, but we have to keep an eye on those low temperatures. If it gets below 32 degrees, then we need to cover them and protect them. And a lot of times, once you cover them, they will survive that frost. Other warm season crops like beans and cucumbers and melons, the second it starts to get cold, they're out. And if you leave them in too long, that's also where you have issues with pests and things. When you leave a plant in that's stressed and not in its ideal growing conditions, you're going to invite pests and diseases in. Okay, so what about our existing tomatoes, peppers, and herbs? If you haven't yet, evaluate them. Is this tomato plant, it made it through the hot summer, yeah, but is it happy that it did? No. Is it happy to be here? If not, again, you're going to invite things you don't want into your garden. So, maybe pull it. But if it's healthy and you're starting to see new growth, pepper plants can live for a long time, but they can also get really large, and the branches are brittle. So as you're growing them, it's often a good idea to cut them back. I generally do that in July or August, but if you haven't yet and you want to cut it back, you can. You want to fertilize, add some compost, and water well, and then you're going to see that new growth. So don't be afraid. It's not too hot to cut things back right now. If it's growing fine and it's covered in blossoms, don't cut all those off now. Like I say, sometimes earlier is better to do those things. It was a long, hot summer. It wasn't our best. It's actually our worst. And so we've got to make sure that soil is ready. Ideally, you had a cover crop or something growing over the summer so you're not coming back to soil that's just dead. That's the reason we want to keep something growing, keep it alive, keep it covered at least with mulch. But if not, then, and even if you did, let's look at what we want to do. We want to start by adding some worm castings. So, fresh worm castings. Does everybody know what those are? Okay, so I won't say it out loud, right? All right, so worm castings. Those are full of microbial activity, and there's just, the soil loves them, and they just kind of kickstart all of the good things that can happen in your soil. And then we're going to put some compost on it. But pull that mulch back before you put on the compost and castings. Because if you're layering that on top of the mulch, you're asking that mulch to break down, and it's going to steal some of the nitrogen that you want to grow your plants. So pull the mulch back, add compost, castings, fill your bed. You can see on this picture, see how that soil level has gone down in this bed? And that's what it does. Over time, that soil level goes down. So fill it back up. Compost, castings, raised bed mix, fill that bed all the way back up. Do castings first, and then compost, and then if it's still pretty low, I would do raised bed mix on top, because you want that top 12 to 8 inch to be really good soil. And so you're feeding the soil below there, and then that raised bed mix. I get mine from Arizona Worm Farm, best stuff. It has compost mixed in with it. It has worm castings mixed in with it. So you don't necessarily have to add those to it. Okay, and this is also a very good time to refresh or add vermicomposting bins to your beds. What's happening when you add vermicomposting bins, the worms are making worm castings right in your beds. And so they're as fresh as they can possibly be, and they will feed your soil amazingly well. So this isn't a class on that, but actually next month's class, it will be on composting and water conservation. So we're going to talk more about vermicomposting then. But if you want to learn more in the meantime, that will take you to an article on my website all about vermicomposting. What's going to happen is when you set up this bin in your bed, you're going to make a habitat for them, add worms, and then you're going to feed them. During the summer, it's hot. And so they go out of the beds, but they leave cocoons, they lay eggs, and some of them come back, but usually it's their kids and grandkids that will come back into the beds. And so you will have worms. You won't need to, if you refresh it, create that habitat, add some food, they're going to come back into your bins. So you don't have to add worms every time. If you've got vermicomposting bins, you're probably seeing the worms coming back as temperatures cool down. There's actually 3 different blog posts all about vermicomposting on my blog. So that will take you there. Got our beds ready. We know which plants are staying. We know which are leaving. And now it's time to plant. And the nice thing is we saw that list of everything we can plant in October. Really, October is the best month to plant just about anything. So it really is about deciding what you want to grow. What are you most excited to harvest fresh from the garden? That list is long. Do not plant everything on the list. You don't need to do that. But pick a couple of things, and you'll be more successful if you have a few different things that you're growing, and then you learn about each one. Go to my website. I have how to grow articles on almost all of the crops. I'm working on making it all. And learn just a little bit. Okay, does this grow best from seed or transplant? What should this look like? What should I be aware of? When's the best time to harvest? That's a big question. Learn those things, and then you'll have that knowledge, and the next year you can plant that and some other things too. So plant a variety, but don't feel like you have to plant all the things. Okay, so let's talk about some of these different groups of plants that we can plant right now. Root crop, carrots, turnips, parsnips, beets, radishes. All of those, excellent time to plant right now. And we plant all of these from seed, right? Who's seen the 6-pack of carrot transplants in the nursery? Has anybody seen those? Right? Don't buy them. Don't buy them. Buy a package of seeds instead. So all of these, buy a package of seeds, and can it be tricky when it's hot to get them to germinate? Yeah, because that soil's going to dry out. So there are a few different things you can do. Plant them maybe a little bit deeper. You can put some burlap down after you plant. You can put a wood board down after you plant. But you're going to have to water a little bit more, because once you plant a seed, you're committing to that seed. Okay, I've got you. I'm going to help you grow, right? And if we just let it dry out, then it starts its journey, and then it just is dead. It dies. So once you plant those seeds, it might mean that you're watering every day, twice a day sometimes, but keep them hydrated until they sprout. Once you see them above ground, you'll know that a lot more is happening below ground, because that seed, what does it do first? It sends out a root down first before it ever sends anything above ground. So once that sprout is there, you won't have to water it quite as often. Not necessarily from carrots. Carrots are okay. If you have old seeds, that's a good question. She's asking, I have old seeds, can I try them? Parsnips, absolutely get fresh seeds every year. But carrots, not necessarily. If you have older seeds, plant more. The germination rates will be lower, but by planting more, you're kind of increasing your odds. Layer it on top. Yeah, because what's going to happen, our soil is alive, right? It's not just, something that we just grow things in. It is full of so many things we can't see, and they're going to create little paths within there. They're going to get the nutrients that they need. So yeah, just layer it on top. All right, brassicas. So brassicas are things like broccoli, cabbage, kale, kohlrabi, cauliflower. And right now, you can plant from seed or from transplant. There's still time to plant from either one of those. As the temperatures get cooler and the days get shorter, you can bet that it's not going to be a sure bet anymore to plant a seed, because you're asking that seed to grow and develop in a shorter amount of time. But right now, the window's wide open. But in December, January, if you're like, okay, we want some more broccoli, you need to find some transplants, or you need to be starting those indoors. Greens. Who's looking forward to winter greens, right? This is why we have a winter garden. All of these delicious greens that you can just go out, pick your salad every day. You can plant from seed or transplant. I'm going to tell you that the seeds are going to be happier, the plants are going to be happier if you start from seed in the garden, but they'll also grow from transplant. What can happen with some of these is they can bolt. So have you ever seen when you're growing, lettuce, spinach, arugula, all of a sudden it sends out this central stalk, right? That's bolting. That means that the plant is shifting its focus from tasty leaves. It somehow got stressed, either, not enough water, too hot, whatever, and it shifted its focus. All of a sudden it's like, okay, I think I'm going to be dying soon. I need to produce seeds, because that's my job, is to produce seeds. So it's shifting its focus to forming this flower stalk that will eventually produce seeds. Once it does that, it's gone. So seeds, if you plant from seed in the garden, sometimes they last a little bit longer before they bolt. But you can still plant from transplant. You can harvest those seeds. If you want to leave them, it's going to take a while. It's a process of becoming, that whole flower. They're going to create a seed pod. It takes a while. So it's all about choices. If you have the room and you want to do that, a lot of times what people will see, if they let things bolt and drop seed, they're going to have volunteers coming up in their garden, which is not a bad thing. So basil's a little bit different. Yeah, that's a little bit different. It doesn't necessarily send up that central stalk. It's all of the different ones. So that's a little bit different process. So just keep them cut back. All right, celery. This is one of the crops. When I realized we could grow celery here, I was so excited, because a lot of times you just need 1 or 2 or 3, and it's so convenient to have it growing in the garden, and you go out to the garden and just harvest a few. It does like lots of water. This is one that you'll probably want to, add some fertilizer to, some fish emulsion or something like that. And it's also, these seeds take a long time to germinate. So if you have not started seeds indoors, do it today or yesterday, or look for transplants. But you can also use the cut-off ends to plant from. But this is a great, and it has a lot of flavor. So if you want not any flavor in your celery, you might not like it as much. But to me, I love homegrown celery. It tastes really good. Okay, yes. So a cutoff end, that's a great question. So she's saying, is it better to get a transplant or a cutoff end? And a cutoff end, you're probably not going to see how these are these big, beautiful, really uniform, beautiful things of celery. It's going to look a little bit different from that because it's growing from the middle. You'll still get lots of celery on it. The ideal is transplants if you want these big, beautiful stalks of celery. But cut-off ends, you're going to get harvest, and again, you can harvest around the outside, and you're going to get celery from that. She's asking about fertilizer. Can you do granular, liquid? I like liquid, and I don't use a lot of fertilizer because I have the vermicomposting bins, but something like this, I would just use a light dose more often of a liquid fertilizer. I haven't seen any yet. There should be. They're usually summer winds, A&P. Anybody seen any celery transplants out and about yet? Okay, garlic. It's a great time to plant garlic. Okay, garlic is grown from garlic, right? From cloves. So you're going to have a big clove, and you're going to break it apart and plant that individual clove, and then it's going to grow a new kind of head of garlic, right? Now is a really good time to plant. There are different varieties, and when you buy it from the grocery store, you can might not be the best, but if that's all you have, you can try it. So soft neck varieties grow best here with mild winters. You can tell if it's a soft neck or hard neck when you break it apart, right? If you break it apart and there isn't a little kind of stick in the end, a stem in the middle that it all comes off of, then it's a soft neck garlic. If there is that little base that kind of goes up, that's a hard neck. That's just the hard neck of the garlic. So there you go. So soft neck varieties grow best in mild winters. The hard neck varieties really like it to get really cold. They're going to form up best after it gets cold. Question? That's a different kind of variety, but elephant garlic grows well here too. Onions, okay. And so with onions, short day varieties grow best because we're asking them to bulb up while the days are still short. If you buy a long day onion, that's if you want them to grow all summer long. If we grew onions all summer long, we could eat them right out of the garden, right? They'd just be cooked. But short day varieties, they will grow and bulb up while the days are still short. So that's why we grow short day varieties. So you might see the little balls and bags of onion, little sets they're called, at Home Depot or the store. Don't buy those. They are already kind of stressed out and they tend to bolt. Remember we talked about what bolting is, how it sends up a stalk. The onion won't be as good, it won't store as long. But if you plant from seeds right now or onion transplants, you can order a lot of nurseries will have transplants. Dixondale Farms, if you've heard of them, they will also sell onion transplants and ship them to you, and I've had really good luck with Dixondale. Sir? No, once it's decided to bolt, you really can't stop it. You can cut off that center thing, but really the flavor is going to change in the leaves. They're going to get bitter. Have you bitten into bitter lettuce and things like that? It's not going to be as good. With an onion, you've probably seen an onion that's bolted before. It rots quicker. You can still eat it. You can absolutely still eat it. But once it's decided, once it's made up his mind, because they're shipping to you in the heat. Okay, so here's how I feel about that. Because a lot of times you'll go into other places that have their seeds stored outside all summer long. And so that's an option. I feel like I've had pretty good luck with the seeds that I've ordered online. And it can be hot with them sitting in your mailbox for a little bit. But I've had really good luck with seeds I've ordered online. Okay, so peas, probably my family's favorite crop to grow. Lots of different varieties. Find one that you like. If you want to shell peas, there's varieties for you. Snow peas, used in stir fries and things. Sugar snap peas, those are ones you just eat the whole thing. They're so good. And nothing is better than a fresh pea from the garden because the second you pick it, those sugars that are so sweet, right, for that sugar snap pea, they start converting to starch. And so nothing you buy at the grocery store is going to taste as sweet as what you can just pick and eat in your own garden. So lots of good varieties. My favorite, super sugar snap peas. They're so good. And so you definitely want to provide a trellis. That can be simple. Give them something to climb, and they will climb. And plant from seeds. The seeds are nice and big. I haven't planted any pea seeds yet, but I'm going to. We could wait a week or two to plant pea seeds till we're out of the hundreds, probably. But they will grow. Yes?
Where do you get your seeds online?
I get them all over. So if you go to my website, on the shop page, there is a drop-down menu, and it says favorite seeds. And so if you go in there, there's my favorite seed companies. And then I also list the varieties that I love and grow every year. Like this pea is listed in there with a link to the seeds. So I get them, if you see me holding seed packets, I'm usually holding 8 or 10 different, varieties from different seed companies. All right, herbs. Excellent time to start adding some annual herbs to our garden. Cilantro, dill, fennel, parsley. Amazing, they grow through the cooler months. And again, cilantro and dill, you can plant from transplant. They have a long taproot. They're in the carrot family, so they're best from seeds. So wonderful for your garden. We're going to talk more about why we should plant some of these in a little bit.
What about bay?
Bay is a tree or a bush, but the best time to plant bay is October, thank you. So if you want to plant bay leaves, now's a great time. Yeah. So perennial herbs. Those are things like sage, thyme, lavender, oregano. What's the best time to plant those? October is the very best time. And part of the reason for that is in the spring, it's also a good time to plant. But how long do we have until it gets so hot? A while, right? We have the longest we're ever going to have for that plant to get established and be happy. So now is the time to plant. In the spring, it can still grow and get established, but that summer is looming. So planting now is the best for all of these herbs. And the easiest thing to do is to plant from transplant. A lot of these seeds you can, but they take a long time to grow. And again, we're maximizing our short seasons here. We want to get this plant established. Plant from transplant. Lots of questions. I'll take one here. There are a few different types. French lavender does really well in your landscape. Spanish lavender also does well. As gardeners, we tend to overwater, right? We want to feel like we're doing something for our plants, so often our mistake is overwatering. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But while it's still warm, hot, your garden is going to need more water, but it definitely doesn't need as much water right now as it did in June or July, for all those reasons we talked about. And as soon as those temperatures come down, the water needs are going to go down even further. Think about how quickly your pool cools down in the winter, right? It's probably already started to cool down a little bit. Everything just gets a little bit cooler. So pay attention to your soil, and then you're gradually going to lengthen that time between watering. Right now, you might be watering every 2 or 3 days. In the winter, it might be once a week, because that soil is going to retain moisture and you won't need to water as often. But too much water is definitely going to, if it's growing slowly, you feel like things aren't growing like they should, check your watering. If your soil's always wet, the plants don't like that much. So it can cause slow growth in your plants. We're planting seeds and seedlings. So this is that little teeny transplant there. So it needed watering more often, but now I'm starting to see new growth. I'm starting to see new leaves on that celery, so I'm not watering it I'm not as worried about it. I know that its roots are growing down and growing deep. But our seeds and newly planted seedlings, so once you decide to plant, you're committing, right? You're committing to those seeds and transplants that I will take care of you and make sure you get established. Pests, little ladybug. Here's my best advice for pest control. Leave a couple of empty spots in each of your bed for companion plants. They will attract the beneficial insects and pollinators, and that is who is going to help you in your garden. Bugs aren't bad, right? We want a variety of bugs in our ecosystem in our garden. And if we have a variety of different types of flowers, it's going to attract different types of bees, different types of, everything to our garden that's going to help. And a lot of times it's their kids, right, that are helping us. So this is dill, I believe. So this is dill that has bolted, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, because once it bolts, look at all those flowers. And then you're going to see every stage of ladybug, lacewing, all over that plant. When you're planting your garden, leave a couple of empty spots in each bed. Add some of these in. And a lot of these grow really easily from seed. But before you plant anything, learn a little bit about each one. So you know that borage gets huge, right? So you know to plant that on a corner. Nasturtium also is going to grow out, so plant that on the corner of your bed. Learn a little bit about each one, but these are all excellent choices of companion plants with different types of flowers that will attract beneficial insects. So barrier methods, you're probably going to have to put up some kind of, fence it in. Don't let it, and that's hard. We were talking, there's a lot of, what do you call them? Critters, lots of critters. So there's nothing, no magic other than just barriers to keep them out. So we're aiming for a variety throughout your garden. And really, when you think of your yard, think of your whole yard. This could also mean you're adding variety of native plants to your yard, and that we're not using pesticides in our yard. We're making it a welcoming place for beneficial insects and pollinators all throughout our yard, but especially in our garden. So beyond just planting good things in our yard, the most important thing that can be in your garden, right, is you. Spending time in your garden. It's not just we plant in the spring and then in the fall we come out and just have this beautiful cornucopia of produce. It's a little easier in the fall and winter, but if you're in your garden every day, you're going to spot problems. You're going to be like, oh, my watering system, isn't working. There's this, I've got a hole in my cabbage leaf. I turn it over and there's a caterpillar. Spending time in your garden every day, walk around. But also it's not just the bad things that you're going to see, right? You're going to see all the good things that are happening in your garden. You're going to see those seedlings sprout and become established. You're going to see those first blossoms appear. All of this wonderful things. You're going to see all of the insects and bees and everything that loves coming to your garden as much as you do. So spend time in your garden every day. And then you're going to catch pest problems early. There are solutions, there are organic solutions you can use, but anything that you do, anything that you spray can also harm beneficial insects as well. So the best thing you can do is prevent, don't use pesticides so that you can build up a good supply of beneficial insects, and then spend time and catch problems when they're small. Hand picking, very effective. Sometimes it's kind of gross, right? My chickens, does anyone's chickens like cabbage worms? They do? Mine won't eat them. Really? Okay. All right, I'm going to keep trying. All right, so tip number 8. This is the fun part. This is why we have a garden. Make sure you're harvesting from your garden and eating what you harvest. So let's talk about greens. Swiss chard, kale, spinach, lettuce. The nice thing about how harvesting these is we don't have to go out and just harvest the whole thing and be done with it. We can go out and just pick what we need. They're going to grow kind of from that terminal bud that can bolt, but before it bolts, that's where it's going to send out new leaves from. So you're picking on the outside of the plant, just going around and harvesting the leaves that you want for that day, right? You're going out, harvesting what you want, and then it's going to send out more. That's called cut and come again, right? We're taking some off the plant, and we come back the next day. Some things like lettuce and things, sometimes you can even just chop off the whole thing and it will come again. But all of these things, harvest. Don't just wait for the end of the season to begin harvesting your vegetables, but these greens especially, make it a habit to harvest every day. Plant enough that you have a variety that you can go out and harvest from. If you're doing that, you don't ever want to take more than like a third at a time. Don't just strip it down because it needs those leaves to grow, but harvest. Harvest every day. Okay, peas. So if you grow peas and you leave them on the vine, the pea plant will feel like its job is done because in its mind, its job is to grow, produce seeds, and we're done. But what happens when we pick off those seeds? It's going to produce more. It's going to be like, oh man, I just washed this floor. Now you guys are getting messy again. No, but it's going to produce more, right? We're picking off the peas, and it's going to produce more. So we want to keep them harvested. That's why when you're spending time in your garden, you're going to see, oh man, there's a lot of peas. I'm going to bring some kids out to help me get all these picked. Or just knowing what is ready to harvest and keeping it harvested, it will help keep your production up. If you're not harvesting, production will slow down. So keep things harvested. Learn about the crops you're growing. Whichever crops that you're decided, you're most excited to grow, take the time to learn about that particular crop and learn the best time to harvest. Because it's nice, we're going to harvest it, go inside and eat it. We don't have to harvest it and think, okay, this has to stay good for 2 weeks in order, to get to the grocery store so people can buy it and it won't be rotten. We can harvest it at the best time. We can harvest them when they're young, tender, flavorful, so delicious. So learn about them. And then eat it, right? Eat and enjoy what you grow. Learn to like it, right? If you don't like okra, try growing it yourself, picking it really young, and try different methods of using it. But that being said, if you don't like, you can grow what you like also. You don't have to grow certain crops. But eat and enjoy whatever it is that you're growing. And enjoy, right? We are at the beginning of a beautiful and wonderful fall and winter gardening season. Get things planted so you can enjoy your garden. Thank you so much. We have time for a couple of questions still. We've got a few minutes, so I'll start here. Yes, she's asking about vermicomposting. Can you do them inside the house? Absolutely. It's tougher to do outside the house because it gets too hot here.
And it's not like cruel to the worms, right?
No, it's not cruel to the worms. You're making a nice habitat for the worms. Yeah, sir. A bird block. I don't really use those. You mean to keep birds out of your garden? I haven't ever tried that. I'm not sure. I think it seems like you would attract more, maybe. They knew? Okay, yes. Yes, I'm growing them right now. Yeah, so best time to, they're a warm season crop. So they like our warm temperatures. So you could still probably plant them a little bit now. Yeah, okay, over here, yes. So the plant, it's, you know, if you look at a thing, it'll say it has yellow leaves, but if you're not watering enough, it has yellow leaves. But, you know, what do you do? So it has limp growth, right? And the best way to check is check your soil. But if the leaves if it just looks kind of limp and leaves are falling off, that's a good indication that you might be overwatering. So check your soil, and that top little bit can dry out. Because again, we've encouraged, you know, we want those roots to grow deep. So that top couple of inches, it's okay for it to dry out. Okay. Oh, sure. You'll be surprised. Like, plants are forgiving. So just, yeah, cut back on, it's okay. We've all done it. And they'll be okay. Okay, one more question here, in the back here. So basil can live through our winters, but like you say, it gets bitter, it's flowered, the stem gets really woody. Maybe leave one plant that you like, but if it's a question of space, prioritize the crops you want to grow. I just wanted to show you here, if you're interested in the planting guide or planting calendar, that will take you to my shop. If you would like to get that, they are available there. But thank you so much for coming, and good luck with your garden. I'm so excited.